Hello everyone, welcome to Ashwin Script. So in the part 1 video, I mentioned about one important reason why US attacked Venezuela and captured its president. The reason connected to drugs. So in this video, that is the part 2 video, I'll be highlighting a very important reason why US attacked Venezuela and captured its president Nicolas Maduro. It's been over the news, but I've found some credible evidence to substantiate, to show that this reason is one of the important factors. So let us get into the reason. So I'll start with the statement by Trump. So Trump wrote that the US operation would continue until Venezuela returned all of the oil, land and other assets. So I was wondering how can Venezuela steal something which is theirs? Because by the statement of Trump, it mentions that returning all of the oil, land and other assets that they previously stole from us. So when I read this statement, I was confused. How can something which is of Venezuela be of someone else? So that is where I further researched from certain credible sources, the government sources. So what is the gist here? So if you look at the figure here, from 1920 to 1990, it shows the production of crude oil in Venezuela. It's a graph which depicts the production of crude oil in Venezuela and also the labor productivity. So we'll focus on this line, that is dash dash dash. It is that line which talks about the crude oil production. Now from 1920 to 1970, the crude oil production has been rising. You can see this. The crude oil production has been rising in Venezuela. Because during this time, many American oil companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, all these companies were involved in the oil production, the crude oil production in Venezuela. And due to them, Venezuela could extract the oil. It's very difficult to extract Venezuelan oil because it is heavier. The crude oil in Venezuela is heavier compared to the crude oil that is found in anywhere in the world. So it is very difficult. You need technology, you need complicated manpower, infrastructure to extract it. So American companies had that. American oil companies had the infrastructure and they started extracting it. But from 1970 onwards, you can see this blip. You can see this graph going downwards. You can see the production of crude oil coming down. Because during this 1970s, the Venezuelan economy underwent a nationalization process. Nationalization process means every aspect of the economy of Venezuela was transferred under the state. State started controlling, the government started controlling the oil sector. It told the private sector, it removed the private sector. That is called nationalization. In many countries, this process happens, nationalization of assets. That is government taking control over assets. So after government taking, the government of Venezuela and its state-owned oil company taking control, you can see the protection of oil going down. So basically, American companies started exiting from 1970s after this policy change in Venezuela. The American oil companies started exiting Venezuela, except I think only one oil company was present. So this carried on under Hugo Chavez, that is the president before Nicolas Maduro. Hugo Chavez, he was also socialist. this policy was carried on. He put a lot of restrictions on private foreign oil companies. And this was also carried on by Nicolas Maduro. Now you understand why he was captured. Why America has a problem with only Nicolas Maduro. He also started following his predecessor's policy, that is Hugo Chavez's policy of restricting American oil companies in the extraction of the crude oil in Venezuela. Now, using this information, I further researched. That is when I understood a very important graph. This is from the official US government document, that is the US Energy Administration. So one glaring fact is that the reserves, the crude oil reserves in US is known for its crude oil and shale gas. But the reserves in US is declining. It fell in 2023 from 2022. It is declining even in 2025. So the oil reserves in US is declining. So they need some other places to get this oil. And also coupled with this information, the present government in US, that is the regime of Trump has been really funded by the oil and gas industry during his elections. Now this is a private news report. I again researched it whether this fact is correct. That is when I looked at the graph, a table published by the Federal Election Commission USA, which talks about the funding by individuals and corporates on different political parties, different individuals. So that is when, if you look at the 2024, it includes both US presidential election and also the US legislature elections. So 2024 was the US presidential election. So this data shows the funding of oil companies, to whom they funded, which candidate, which political party. You can see here this first line. Majority of the funding went to Republicans, the Republican Party. And Donald Trump belongs to Republican Party. So oil and gas companies, like the Republican parties, they fund them. They also funded the Donald Trump's campaign because Trump's vision and policy is favorable to oil and gas industry, because he talked about expanding fossil fuel industry because he doesn't believe in climate change. You have heard these policies from him, these statements from him. So there is a strong economic interest behind America's capture of Nicolas Maduro. It is all over the news. But there are credible evidence from government reports asserting that the oil, America wanted to recapture the crude oil base in Venezuela. They once had that, but they were told to exit. They were told to go after 1970. Again, they want to recapture it. So that is why Trump mentions this statement as returning the oil, land and other assets that they previously stole from us. It means that it was the American companies who initially extracted, but they were removed from them due to the nationalization policy. Now they want to get it back. So a strong economic interest behind USA's capture of Nicolas Maduro. They have problem only with Nicolas Maduro. So stay tuned for the next video, focusing on this capture of Venezuelan president and its impact on India. Thank you so much. Please post your comments, your feedbacks, and if you like such content, please like and subscribe the channel. See you all in the next video.